and welcome you all again here. So, I've got a first question, and I make just a round to get for you the first learnings. Paul, starting with you. What are your first observations or maybe questions for the others?
Well, I've been very quiet, which for people who know me is very, very unusual.
Never happens.
Because I really feel like a kid in the candy store here. It's, I think the information that was shared and the discussions that were had were really fascinating. And when something good is happening in front of your eyes, you just let it happen and grow. And one thing that occurred to me as I was listening in was that there was a lot of alignment at the higher level. It almost seemed like everyone, although it was at a different scale, it was in a different operational theater, it was with different technologies or projects or specifics, the overall goals and the overall, I guess, targets were very much the same. And in my experience, this is when you agree on the long-term goal that you're trying to accomplish, you're going to be able to figure out the details. And yes, the details were different. I mean, if you look at the size and the scale of ROPS in big industrial downers compared to the smaller microgrids on islands, the scale is different. But if you really drill down and distill it, the challenges are actually very similar. And that's why I do think that this has true merit in itself. And I think we all can learn from each other. And so I'm very, very happy, actually.
Happy and quiet.
And quiet, which again is a very unusual thing.
So moving on to you, Leon. How did you perceive today?
I think we had a good session with, from our side, 2 interesting island experiences. It was also nice to see some nice islands in the part of Jillis. So there you see that island, remote, look to Paul, and industrial, commercial are pretty close to each other. And so it was good to see. I think at one side you see that driving to more 100% renewables. And that asks a lot of controls and automation and new technologies like flywheels and all kinds of tidal and wave energy applications. So I think there's a lot of need for innovation. And at the other side, you see also that, another important element is also telling the story to the government, to policymakers, to other people that are important to really develop these projects and also create this new infrastructure. I think there is also a lot of mission work still to be done. That I saw also in the other stories. And I think there we can really learn from each other.
Nice, very nice. And for you, Paul?
Yeah, actually, I want to go back to one of the slides I put on the screen the first time. No, but I'll explain. It's the added value slide, and I heard a lot of added value today, and I think that's the good thing. So everybody put it added value to actually on top of some other issue. What made it very valuable for me, and as I said before, I like to see it in conjunction with functions, water supply and waste disposal, because that's one of the 3 things we have as issues, but they're also always together. So, but the added value today from all the briefers and also the panel, for me that was great, because I can take a lot home and bring it home and look at it and can find out who can be in our network to be better next day. And I think that's the most important thing for today.
Very good. Jillis.
I actually have a question to Leon, because what we see with the industry is that they have a business to run, and energy at the moment in most cases is still considered a cost driver, and we see the transition there to a value driver because of their interaction with the environment. So would be really interested to learn how you see the role of the C&I entities on an island. How do they participate? How do they drive the microgrid developments on an island?
I think we touched on that topic with Simon when he was telling about the the economic value of clean energy on islands when looking to tourism. We did similar research on Schiermonnikoog, the Dutch island. What is the willingness, but also the effect of having a renewable energy element. And also Adam was pointing and his project in Palawan. It's next to a very special area, an underwater river area, a natural resort. And there you see a lot of tourism and also hotels. And when you look to that infra, that 650 off-takers, there the SMAs are the important ones. So there you see really hotels that want to support the local tourism and that really are investing or making a bankable project with off-take agreements. I think that's a very important element where you see that businesses and remote areas are coming together.
Yeah. And what we also see is that with the contribution and participation of commercial entities, it automatically becomes a professional and commercial project. And also the requirements on the energy supply increases. Because as a homeowner, you might be less impacted if the power goes out for 5 minutes, but a commercial operation really wants to continue. And that requirements will increase, as was mentioned by Rob as well, because our dependence on electricity or the availability of energy increases and increases and increases. So the value for industry is higher, and that really makes for a commercial drive towards that.
Yeah,
because that's one of the things I was curious about. Is what is driving this decarbonization? I mean, we all know the Paris Climate Accord, and we all know that there is a high cost for fuel, for example, in the operational theater, but at islands.
At islands.
Remote. What is it? Why do people want to decarbonize?
Tomorrow I take you to a nice exhibition in the Amsterdam Scheepvaartmuseum.
Okay.
Cardier for Low-Ice.
Yeah.
Showed us very good what will happen with islands next 10, 20 years when we do not take action. So when you are living on an island,
you feel the sense of urgency.
A sense of urgency much more than when you live in Switzerland.
So, but it's interesting because it's now on islands. It's very stable. It's carbon based, mainly diesel
or nothing,
or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And transitioning to a clean energy supply, microgrids, etc., is a lot of hassle. There's cost associated with it. Yet the community still embraces it and wants to move forward with it. In your experience?
Yeah, I think they will, because there's quite some research done on islands and the community sense on islands. They want to arrange things together. They used to arrange things together. And then when you can arrange it yourself, then with the current state of technology, it's also possible to make a microgrid. And there are great examples like Kietnos, but also Isle of Egg. I think it's not that difficult. Of course, there's work to be done, but it's also not that challenging. And that's, I think, that was different when you in the past were depending on power purchase agreements or big companies that have to go there, and they prefer to build a big coal-fired plant instead of taking care of such a small solution.
And for you, so the why decarbonize? Why do this?
It's to be honest, it's not about decarbonizing. It's about making your operation better. And that's the most important thing. And then it's, of course,
decarbonization is a way to get there.
It's actually to be honest, actually, if you do it right, it's a side effect. If you do it well, because you use less diesel. But you're what I said before. You're adding value to your mission, because you're not spoiling the vicinity of where you are, where other people live. So it's a bit of we're always a guest in somebody else's country. So and then we come there with our big trucks, spoil, and it can be seen as spoiling the environment. So it's a bit more than that, and it is. But the other thing, it's also it saves you lots of logistics. And if you save logistics on the way in, it also saves you logistics on the way out, because you have less waste, you have less wastewater, you're using less. So, and that's actually the thing. And you should do this actually by not changing the comfort of our soldiers, but that's pretty important, because it's very simple. Say you cannot shower anymore, or you cannot heat anymore. But you can say that at home, you know how it works. I know how it works. It doesn't work, and that's the same. So you should have the same comfort with a lower carbon footprint, and then you're having the logistic burden less.
Yeah.
But then also, because your logistic burden is less, it's more confidence for your for your facility where you're living in. Because I don't want to have big fuel trucks in the front of my house every day. So somebody in Afghanistan or Bosnia doesn't want that too. We're not that different. So it's also, let's say, confidence building from our side to add value. So it's a mixed why.
Yeah, a why. And good. Thank you, Paul. And then Jillis, we saw a couple of whys, right? For commercial and industrial. You saw Richard talking about the Alphen aan den Rijn situation, Rob about the Dow Terneuzen. There's congestion. You know, they're waiting for the TSO to do it. So what is that the why for CNI?
It's broader than that. The why for decarbonization is a license to operate. Everybody knows at the end we want to keep the islands, and we want to keep them. We don't want to have them end up submerged. So there's a key driver for decarbonization. And as Rob mentioned, there are different options for decarbonization, and electrification is one of them. And we know that the energy sources like wind and solar and electricity storage are abundantly available. The technology there, the costs are dropping dramatically. So there's a clear technological option for the electrification. But the why not? It's actually not a why. It's a why not. Is the availability of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then the conversion and the storage and keeping it close is a why.
Yeah. And then the why not microgridding, meshed microgridding would be an answer to the
why not.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right?
definitely. When you're able to keep control and ensure your availability, that's a why.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the why, I have some clue, because that's your question. If you're looking at the who, are we talking with the right stakeholders? In fact,
I think there are two entities missing in this case. One is the regulatory authority, because everybody has to play with the same rules, and if the rules don't allow or don't stimulate certain actions, do you change the game or do you change the rules? Because we've changed technology. There's a lot of technology developments. So do we still need or do we still want the rules as they were developed for technologies of 100 years ago? It might be the industry, but it's also, as I mentioned, license to operate. It's the general public. As with island grids, SMEs, commercial, industrial operate are key drivers. But at the end, it's about the entire cluster, the microgrid itself. And we cannot do it alone. So who do we miss? Well, everybody who's not on the table, because you have to do it together. And as a solution provider, as an end user, as an operator, you need to work together and set the rules together.
Nice. Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Of course. Go on.
When you mentioned the regulator, I think it's a little bit broader. You see most times several governmental institutions taking care of the energy system. The regulator is one. I think the grid operator is also a very important one.
Yep.
The ministry, sometimes the regulator and the ministry are close to each other, sometimes not. So we saw that also with the Philippines, with Indonesia. There, a lot of, but also Europe, a lot of policy development is still needed. Also, when we look to the Netherlands, when the grid operators had taken action 10 years ago, then we would now be in different situations. But they are always a little bit lacking behind.
Yeah.
So I think when we really want to speed up, then it's good to
Which is what you saw
involve them.
Yeah, and we see
in the
that
process.
we see that in Brussels, for example, with energy storage, and is that if you look at the regulatory framework, electricity storage doesn't exist, and as only last year we were able to get a fundamental description of electricity storage in the clean energy package. Before that, we had generation, transmission, and end use.
Yeah.
Electricity storage surely didn't exist on paper. Technology-wise, it's been out there for ages.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's like one of your panel members said, hey, they're just basically leapfrogging over all of this, and they just design, build, own, and operate. So I think that's another way of moving things forward. Not everybody can afford that position, but I think that was a pretty powerful.
I think it's also what you when you're talking about focusing on certain projects. But when we look to Southeast Asia, when we really make things work there, then also policy development is very important, because then we are not talking about single projects. We are not talking about energy lookalike companies. Now we are talking about it's a kind of system change. And then policy development is very important.
But shouldn't we just accept that they are lagging behind?
Always, with everything.
Exactly.
But that's what lawmaking is, huh?
I mean, it's always following the development. The technologies is moving extremely fast. As your panel members as well demonstrated, they're actually doing it. They're designing it, building it, operating it. And I know when more than a decade ago in the US, we had the first lithium-ion a container with batteries installed. The first time our client actually presented it, and the first question from the audience was, how do you get permission to do that? And their response was, hey, it's much easier to say sorry afterwards than to get permission beforehand. So, and I think that's one of the benefits of this. People, let's do this, let's learn. And we will make mistakes, but mistakes make you learn.
What could be interesting having on the table are the non-believers. Because we talk to believers, and we have seen 20 believers today. And it's always very interesting to discuss with non-believers. Because I think we can learn from them why they're not believing.
I think that's a very good point you made. And that's also something to take with us maybe for future. But for everybody also who's, of course, involved. Because that are the barriers which are mentioned by the panelists. But if we recap to this session of today and answer our main question, why we're here, is how microgrids are taking over the world. What would you say?
Step by step. I had a discussion. What we see is we have the pyramid of the energy system. Currently, we have large-scale generation, transmission, distribution, end use, and that's established. And we're not all of a sudden going to flip over to microgrids. So, as I mentioned, step by step, islands, humanitarian, military applications, they will appear. But at the same time, within the existing energy system, microgrids will evolve.
The hierarchy, right?
Sorry?
The hierarchy.
Yes.
That's exactly.
They will condensate within the system.
Yeah, interesting.
So from the inside, probably is the answer.
Yeah. I think you're silent, so I guess you all agree.
No, I think it's a little bit the world we're in. In my world, microgrids are already there for decades. And because when I'm expeditionary, it's always a microgrid, and I see the evolvement to less carbon. And I think that's a step for us. So we have to do it with the bigger energy demands and reducing actually the footprint. And that's really the issue we have. And I explained the why, so I'm not going to do this again. And I think that's for us, that's the important stuff. And then we're going on, because then they go by the step by step from how do this in operations, how electrify, for example, vehicles, what is extremely difficult for us, because we have to get the power somewhere from, and not from a generator. So that gives us some other new issues. We don't have, so but on the microgrid, on the base camps, it's already there, and we're just evolving and actually looking into the market, what's there, install those smart applications, and that I think that really works.
I think we also should remember it. 15 years ago, I didn't believe in solar. I was building coal plants, and then
were?
I was. And then I joined a solar company, get involved in the solar business, did a lot of solar south of Europe. Then I realized, things can change, and I think we also should look to the future in that way.
Yeah.
And when we look to Southeast Asia, Indonesia, 17,000 islands, much more islands in that region, and they all want electricity. They have it, not clean. They want it clean. I think there's a huge opportunity. There is no infrastructure now, or very poor infrastructure. Why not install it that way? So and then we can really, when we do it in a well-developed approach, we can really see the same rollout as we have seen in solar in Europe.
Yeah, it's almost like with the leapfrogging that you saw with cellular phone systems in Africa, right? But nobody's going to build a landline if you would have the option now, and that's what they did over there. And I think that's what you'll see probably with some of these microgrids is if you don't need to build a large centralized utility scale power infrastructure, just do this.
But for sure, it will be an interesting story, and it's hard to predict how it really will be, how it really will run.
It will evolve.
I have a last question. So what are the next steps? Because my conclusion on the question how microgrids are taking over the world is that for sure it's about cooperation and connecting. That's for sure. Without? No. So next steps. We have been here 2 days, 2-day sessions. We shared information. We shared our networks. We shared panels. We had questions for the audience. And I'm very curious how you look at the future with this community.
Well, I think in my personal experience, I've been through many different ordeals, many different businesses and activities, and I've learned that for something to be successful, it basically needs 3 ingredients. It's the solution that you're bringing to the table, and it has to be a real solution. It has to have real value. The second part is you have to bring it or communicate it or present it to the market and to your target in a way that they understand it. So the messaging has to be right. But then thirdly, the timing has to be good. And I think that's those 3 together. If I look at this microgrid development movement and what we've been talking about here for these 2 days, I think it checks all these 3 boxes at this point. So are we going to move it forward? Yes. And how are we going to do that? I think that's still to be determined. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this session that I can see we migrate this conversation to a larger stakeholder group in a public-private partnership type of model, and then continue to delve into it. I think we're going to need to take an even deeper dive than we did today. And since we're all in the same boat, it's probably going to have to be a submarine, a big submarine that we're going to go into. But I think this is going to continue. And as I said before, we as me and my company will be here to continue be a driving force behind it. It's been a marvelous experience for us. So,
how's that for you, Leon?
I think Paul approached me 2 months ago to tell a little bit more about islands and microgrids. And of course, I already had my network, but during the last weeks, we have worked quite intensively with the contribution to these sessions, but also looking to the future. So last week, we had interesting talks with Nikos from Athens and with Udo from Jakarta about the cooperation between Technical University Delft, the University of Athens and the SBM-ITB in Jakarta. And then we are especially focused on policy development. So what is needed there on new policies, what we can learn from Europe and bring to Southeast Asia. Another important element, I think, is a kind of rollout program. When you have a kind of standard concept that you can really roll out, and what are then very interesting elements for such a rollout program. I think that's an important element. And also, technology, you have to see it work. So I think it's very important that we also have more test sites available where we can really see that things are working. Then on a smaller scale, like the Greek island, but also on a bigger scale, I think that's very important that we there also share experiences.
Yeah.
So there we also like to contribute.
Nice. And your next steps, Paul?
Yeah, first I think we have to let the network work. So it's only 2 weeks, so it costs a bit of time. So I think in a month's time, we should see people approaching each other. It's already happened, actually.
For sure.
And I think then for me, the next step is find those people who are also in your community are very interesting for me. Not for me, but more for my energy team, energy transition team, and try to bring them together and to find out if we can work together, especially now in our plan. We're going to build this in a year. It is due to COVID, it's a bit delayed. This test facility, or test, I cannot really say, it's an open lab in Ede, and maybe even, but it's a longer term, into Aruba. And I think that's an interesting part, because also what Martin said, this NATO program, it's not secret. So we can bring this to the table if necessary. So
Share.
And then really, for us, the sharing is a very interesting part, because all those people in the network know much more than we know, because they've done it already. So I think that is really the way forward. So I'm going to find out the interesting bits and nuts, get them in, and find out if we can build our own. Because I don't need everybody, but let the network do this. That's true. If you can, that's too difficult. You have to find out what you need, and if it's interesting for you. And that's also for the audience that listens right now. To think it's interesting, please contact, because that makes it interesting. Then we can discuss. It's interesting that we meet each other again after 4 years, talking about the same stuff as 4 years before. But I see that we made huge steps in those 4 years. So that's the great thing. So actually, the network was working already. It has now taken a big step.
I like to hear that. And for you, Jillis, what are your next steps? How do you see this community?
Yeah, well, all of the above. And I really appreciate Paul for taking this initiative. And indeed, I mean, Paul and myself, we've met several years ago, and all of a sudden, hey, we're back in the same room, but both having a lot of different experiences. So no, I fully support that. And moving forward, I think you mentioned getting on board the non-believers. I really like that, because that allows us to be challenged and get even better. So exchanging information, and the next coming period, we see some other interesting information from our side become available, and always happy again to share insights to ensure this we're moving forward. And because microgrids are part of the energy transition journey. And they're a key part of that, both on islands, in developing regions, but also in industrialized, so-called developed countries. So it's part of the game, part of the journey.
I think there's very beautiful last words. This has been a wonderful journey for all of us, and I thank you all for the work and the cooperation we had, these sessions, and all the information shared. I feel there's a lot of value in sharing this, so I hope the discussion continues in how to proceed with this microgrids community. For now, we've reached the end of this session. And be aware that I think from next week of this video of today, but also of the 15th, will finally become available via the website of Quintech. But I presume that also all attendees receive an email with a link. So please check also your LinkedIn, and you can watch all the numbers back and the great discussions. For now, I would like to end this session and hope to see you back again. Have a wonderful evening.